Hey, what's up? Liron here, and in this episode of Painting Masters, we'll look at works by Rob Pointon. Now, this is an artist I wanted to feature for a long time now. He's an English oil painter working mostly plein air and impressionistic style, and this is where it gets really cool and fun for me because he works in the style that I find the most interesting and fascinating. Lots of clear, visible brush marks and a lot of simplification, but on the other hand, an impression that is really photorealistic if you just take a few steps back. So I think he's a true master of the skill, especially when it comes to plein air painting. And if you have a similar taste like I do in paintings, you'll really fall in love with his work. I'm going to link down below to his website and Instagram so you can see more and read more. But without further ado, let's jump into looking at his paintings. So brace yourself because this is going to be a bit of a longer one. I just didn't want to give up on any of the paintings that I found because beautiful pieces. We'll start with this one, and I actually want to read to you the description he wrote on Instagram because I think it's interesting. Here's the main painting from my time working inside Manchester Art Gallery. I'm toying with the title The Enchantment of Painting, although feel free to suggest alternatives. The size. This is a painting about honoring the past. The old lady and boy on the bench is a nod to my gran, Mary Pointon, who taught me to paint and took me to exhibitions. The painting that is captivating the viewers in the scene is The Chariot Race by Alexander von Wagner, a masterpiece in dramatic painting painted 2 years after the novel Ben-Hur was written, which I'm unfamiliar with, but I just wanted to give you a bit more information about the painting itself. Now, I couldn't find a good high-quality picture of the entire thing, so this is a slightly lower quality, but you can see the top parts. You see here it's missing. Here you can see the whole thing, and just amazing. To me, this is perfect. A perfect painting, perfect subject, perfect story. Everything is so interesting here. And let me zoom out a bit. I loved it. Capturing a painting within a painting that way is so exciting to me, and you already see a lot of the things I mentioned of seeing the raw brush marks coming through. And let's go for the higher quality one. You can really see the rough brushwork that is definitely deliberate, and this adds so much interest. Now, one thing I want to say, and we'll get to motion, we'll get to many of the different things I love about his work. Colors. His color selection is so clever, and I'm not sure exactly what the method is for doing that. I know he paints on location. Many times he'll do several sessions, but if you look at all of the smaller areas within the painting, you'll notice, for example, here within the painting frame, you get a bit of that strong red-orange. If you look here, you get a bit of the violet, purple. Here there's a bit more of a muted blue turquoise. So there's a lot of interest within the colors. If you even look at this woman's hair, you'll see a bit of blue in it, a bit of purple in it. There's a lot of suggestions of different colors that work so beautifully to have a lot of interest within the painting. And that's one of the things that really captivates me about his work. Now we're going to take it outside, and most of these paintings have interesting names and the locations, so I will say them. So this is painting the streets of London. I assume he painted someone else's painting. Now, motion. Already we can see this idea. Look at the contrast between how sharp the artist, the painter is, and the entire background. And it's so highly simplified, and there's a lot of play on the motion. I'm not sure if that's a like an actual, what do you call it, a sign or an actual bus in motion, but notice how he stretches the brush marks to have that kind of a thing, and this really helps us focus here and leave this to the background. This is something you see in so many of his works that I absolutely love. I'm going to show you an even better example of this in a moment. And again, all of these very interesting colors within the shadows and within the highlights too. The buildings have been really simplified. Some pigeons here for good measure. I'm very impressed with his interpretation. There's a lot of birds chirping out. That's not interrupting the vid, but I'm very impressed with his interpretation. Another thing you'd often see is very clever plays of warms and cools. So if you look at the street scene, as opposed to inside the building where it's warm and nice, and here it's rainy, You get the reflections of people, and you get the odd umbrella. The lights, the warm lights, really show through all the rain and wetness. And the colors, as always, like yellow here, purple there. Just everything has its role in the overall composition and harmony of the piece as a whole and as a story. Next up, here's a market scene. This one, oh, by the way, I forgot the name. This is St. Paul's from Ludgate Hill. This one is Fresh Pala Borough Market. So a market scene. You see these beautiful glass ceiling on top of the market. And this is one of the, I think, more highly simplified scenes when it comes to the brush marks. You see all of these just raw marks of yellow. But again, as long as you allow some details to show through. For example, this is a kid with a hoodie maybe. So this is really cool. As long as you get a couple of details in that are clear, the rest will read perfectly well. And this is a great example of that. Now we're going to go through them rather fast. I want to get to everything. This one. When I talked about motion, I had this in mind. Look at it's not just the way he painted it, the whole way he structured the scene and the perspective here. It looks a little fisheye even. I would say a little skewed perspective, but it looks beautiful. And look at the edge here of the, I don't know what is it, like a tram or train. You see this, there's actually a part that's almost transparent and you can see through. And that really conveys the speed. And notice these brush marks of reflections on the glass or the window. It's just random, seemingly random brush marks that give so much movement here and emotion. And the whole thing, the whole painting is done with a highly loose brushwork. But then it's amplified further on the tram, which makes it look even better. And again, the colors, lovely combinations of warms and cools, and the color shoots through the glassy texture here. Strong orange here on the bridge, like things you'd never think of doing, really. And when you look at when you're able to see reality in a highly creative manner, that's the kind of things that happen. And that's, I think, the real work for artists, to be able to not just know the technique, not just know the basics, but to be able to respond to what you see in a spontaneous manner, in the way you see it, not necessarily in the execution. The execution sometimes has to be highly calculated and planned out, but the way you see it has to respond to what it is, and not just, I think, be internally created, but also as a reaction to what you see externally. I don't know, it's a lot of abstract mumble that I just did here, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, a couple of water scenes. I really wanted to show you that because I think his way of expressing water is just beautiful. So you get this kind of a, I guess, what do you call it? Venice, I suppose it's in Venice. This ripply pattern that you get from center outwards of the light pouring in, the sunlight, I assume, reflecting directly on the water. And this really is, the strength here is from the contrast and the highlight. But I'm going to show you a couple of others where the strength comes from, again, here it comes from the colors, actually. So this is something I also wanted to show you, the crisscross pattern. Again, highly, highly simplified, but beautiful, works amazingly well. You see the buildings here hit by the sun, as opposed to the sides that are in the shadow. A boat here, gondola maybe. Here again, notice the difference in the colors. Here it's more of a, I guess, midday, maybe a bit late, a bit the beginning of the sun starting to set. But here you get the really pastel yellows and oranges and a bit of blues and purples in there. And if we zoom in and look at all of these fine details that are very abstract, you can see each and every brush mark, and honestly it's beautiful. Next up we have this one. Again, another one. I just wanted to cram in all the water scenes together. I forgot to show you the names. Late winter afternoon towards Westminster Bridge. We had another one. This is the moments before the sun arrives. Pont de Academia. Grand Canal. Contre-jour. Rio de la Panada. Yeah, so hopefully you know many of these places. If you're if you live in the UK, you probably know a lot of them. Well, not the Venice ones necessarily. Here, this was one, I think, yeah, this was the one that really stood out for me when it comes to color and value too, because you see these highlights and how they're encapsulated, or rather surrounded by larger, slightly darker highlights. Just softens the shadow and makes the highlight, makes it not seem too strong. But then look at the shadow side of things. You get this beautiful reflection of the orange wall with a very strong blue and purple, and all of these brush marks work in perfect harmony within the light, within the shadow. The highlights themselves have been, again, gently subdued by the areas that are slightly light around them, but still not as light. Just beautiful scene. Here is one of my favorites. I remember seeing this on Instagram. My jaw dropped. Just beautiful. This is Spritz in Campos Santa Maria Nuova. The subject matter is something I love a lot, because it's also, you get this strong, again, people sitting down, eating at a cafe. So city, urban, I love these kinds of things, but also the light and the shadow and the contrast, and how he layers the people here in the foreground with the background of the piazza or whatever that is, and some of the awnings here. A lot of blues and purples in the background, and then a lot of oranges and warms in the foreground, but also accompanied by some of these, these blues for the clothes. I don't know, just perfect. And you see these impasto, what do you call it? The thick brush marks, just beautiful. And I love aerial scenes, so I had to include this one. And it's just perfect how it's not just the outside, but also the rounded table with the coffee mug. Here, well, let's see. This, I don't know where it is. I got this from Facebook, so the pictures don't have names in them. But let me know if you do, and I think I can check on Instagram as well. Just a lovely, lovely scene. I love this highly simplified nature of, the farther it goes, you can barely see anything. But the buildings that are close to us read perfectly well, with all of these small windows and details. But nothing is in excess, really. Just a perfect balance, I think. Here's another one. This one is Taxis in Summer Sun, High Saint Manchester. Just again, this is so. It's kind of like he's really playing with the subject matter, because this, you wouldn't think of going like that. The taxis, or the cars in general, really really catch the sunlight. But he goes a bit crazy with it, even going a little more expressive and showing how the light bounces off the shiny surface of the vehicles, which is something, again, you wouldn't necessarily think of doing. And the chromatic, reflective nature of the car's texture, as well as the metal pieces in it, that reflects back all of these, purple brush marks and blue brush marks and orange, and just all sorts of interesting things going on. Same for the bicycle here, I guess it's bicycle. And this metal frames, the highly reflective nature is expressed just beautifully. And here maybe a bus or a tram with this sign here. You can guess everything. Just, it's amazing how little information we need. Here's another awesome one I found on Facebook just by chance, of the train station. So much going on here. And this is, by the way, what do you call it? It's like a skewed perspective, because you wouldn't be able, it's a wide angle, panoramic perspective. You wouldn't be able to see these wide of angles naturally, because you get this vanishing point, and then you also get this vanishing point. You normally would not have two of these, so we squeezed it all together into a beautiful panorama. Something just genius, really, really genius. I absolutely love this. The signs with the trains and hours, just wherever you look, you can just crop it as a perfect painting in and of itself. So I just love it. Lots of motion here with the people going through the passes, what do you call it, the place you put the ticket on. A lot of motion with the people, then a lot of stillness with these parts, and it goes again into the vanishing point. The perspective is on point. You can see the light shining through the glass ceilings. Just spectacular. And I think that we have this pizza. I call it Pizzeria at Dusk, Leicester Square. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not sure. Sorry about that. Here, what really stands out is obviously the cool and warm place. Warm inside and next to the seating area, but then a little cooler outside. And all of these neon signs and just so many details that have been abstracted perfectly well. And I think this is the last one. One of my favorites as well, thanks to the warm and cools. I remember seeing this on Instagram and also being shocked at how well everything is conveyed. Just beautiful. I had a really good time, and the more I enjoy these, the less of a serious input I have to say, and just I can share the love of the artwork with you. That's pretty much all I can do. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this one. Now let's wrap it up face to face. So this is it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I think aside from just an excellent and beautiful interpretation of the scene with a great sense of place, there's also a lot of movement and cleverness in how he works the composition and the different elements and changes things around. Just a lot to aspire to and to learn how to do in my own medium. For me personally, it's just a lovely thing and a lovely inspiration to try and recreate that in my own kind of work. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I have. Don't forget, if you're still unsubscribed, to subscribe to the channel. Also like this video, it really helps to share it with more people on YouTube. And also, yeah, just subscribe, because I have a lot of old episodes of the Painting Masters show and new episodes, and I know I'm keeping it at it. I know a lot of people are interested in that, and even though these videos don't tend to get as many views, I still think it's fun for us to do that kind of a thing. If you noticed, I haven't done a paint show episode in a while now, because I find less interest in it recently. I'll probably go back to it, but it's more of a utility for me. This is really interesting for me to do. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I will see you again in the next episode and in the next vid real soon.